Before the case of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie, there was the case of Alex Murdaugh, the patriarch of a prominent South Carolina family with shadowy secrets. 5 bodies and 7 investigations. The case is so complicated that I have created my own flow chart.
Well, now to the death settlement scheme of his deceased housekeeper.
Yet another twist in the unsolved mysteries surrounding the Murdaugh family. Alex Murdaugh is now accused of leading a scheme.
They were never told of the settlements. They were never told of the court hearings. They were never told of the disbursements.
And it just got a little more complicated. Alex Murdaugh, a prominent lawyer, is recovering after being shot in the head over the weekend in South Carolina. His attorney says that he was changing a tire when someone opened fire. And it comes just 3 months after Murdaugh's wife and son were murdered at a family hunting lodge.
It's 4147 Moselle Road. I've been up to it now. It's bad.
Are they breathing?
No, ma'am.
It's your wife and your son?
My wife and my son.
Another tangled knot in this case. Police looking into the murders of Paul and his mother came across information that led them to reopen another case regarding the 2015 accident that killed 19-year-old Stephen Smith.
And now this, the local prosecutor responsible for handling this case has stepped aside.
There was something that changed before you sent that letter to the Attorney General's office.
That's correct.
It's something you can't talk about.
And I cannot tell you what it is. It would not be proper for me to tell you what it is, because then I would be violating the exact same ethics that I have followed since the very beginning of this case.
The Murdaugh murder mystery deepens. A suspect in the roadside attack of Alex Murdaugh is now in custody.
Well, the suspect accused of shooting Alex Murdaugh in a failed murder fraud plot claims he is being set up.
Yeah, I say like a brother to me. I'd have done anything in the world for him, almost anyway. It's crushing to know that evidently I mean nothing to nobody, especially him.
In a tan jumpsuit, handcuffed and shackled, Alex Murdaugh faced a judge.
If anyone wants to see the face of what opioid addiction does, you're looking at it.
Twitching and looking uncomfortable, now a defendant in the Low Country court system he knows all too well.
Just good to see you. Thank you.
Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel.
Today I want to talk about Alex Murdaugh. Not Alex Murdaugh, like I said repeatedly in my last video about this case. The invisible C is not silent. There have been many updates since my last video, and each update is its own rabbit hole. And then when I fall down each rabbit hole, it's deeper and wider than I ever would have thought. That's what he said. I did a video, I'll link it below, where I basically go over the whole backstory of this case, and this video builds on that one. So although I'll recap certain things, and I suggest you watch that one and then watch this one, okay? I do want to thank my subscribers. I really appreciate your support. You've been so kind to me, especially my last few sponsored videos. You're so nice about it. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And let's get on with the video. I think we should start off talking about the property, Moselle. This is the infamous property where Maggie Murdaugh and her son, Paul Murdaugh, were found shot dead by Alex Murdaugh. This property is going to come up a lot. And so I think it's good for us to know the backstory behind it, because that tells us a lot too. Although this property is sprawling, and when I say sprawling, I mean it's over 1,000 acres. It's like a compound, if you could even call it that. I don't know. It's big, okay? And it is valued, a low estimate puts it at around $750,000. But Alex Murdaugh purchased this property for only $5. At first I'm like, oh, this is probably some tax evasion, rich people thing, you know, a loophole. And although that's true, there's more to it than that. According to the deed, it shows that Alex Murdaugh purchased this property from J.M. Boulware. J.M. Boulware is Janine Morris Boulware. Janine is the wife of Barrett T. Boulware. Now, Barrett T. Boulware, he's now dead, but the Boulware family and the Murdaugh family go way back. I'm talking generations. Barrett Boulware's grandfather, his name is Thomas Boulware. He and Buster Murdaugh, now don't confuse this Buster with Alex's son Buster, the only surviving heir. No, this is the original Buster that the little one was named after. So this is Big Buster. He and Thomas Boulware, they tried cases together in the 40s. They were both lawyers. Then the next generation of Boulwares, they got into the commercial fisherman shrimping business, but a lot of people say this was a cover for something else, smuggling, drugs. Let's fast forward to the 80s. During the 80s, as we know, there was the war on drugs. You know, Ronald Reagan, war on drugs. Part of that was something called Operation Jackpot. And this was in the Low Country. They were these called gentlemen smugglers. They were basically, including Boulware, accused allegedly, my conspiracy, don't sue me. Do not sue me, please. Legal dynasty in South Carolina. Don't sue me, allegedly, my conspiracy. During Operation Jackpot, they ended up busting a boat. And this boat was owned by Boulware, the family friend with the Murdaugh. On this boat was like over 800 bales of marijuana. What ended up happening is Boulware turned himself in. And then there was supposed to be a trial. And then something weird happened. What? I'll tell you. What happened was the star witness who was supposed to testify against Boulware, he got hit by a car and died. And let me read you the article. Witness dies in accident. A 33-year-old federal witness was killed early Saturday morning when he walked into the path of an oncoming vehicle. He walked into the path of an oncoming vehicle. It says Franklin C. Branch at 1:20 a.m. was making his way to the Wonder Bar in St. Joe Beach when he was struck by a car driven by T.J. Whitfield. Whitfield, returning home from Gulfport, Mississippi, was questioned by authorities and released. Branch was one of 9 people arrested in February when authorities seized about 17 tons of marijuana from a shrimp boat in Beaufort, Southern Carolina. I can't say anything. They said that Branch had a high blood alcohol level at the time of death. Gilman FBI agents were investigating the case as Branch was scheduled to testify in a drug trial. Funeral services are scheduled, blah, blah, blah. Turns out that Alex Murdaugh and Barrett Boulware own a lot of properties together. And a lot of these properties have something in common. Quote, 9 properties in particular are located at strategic access points on or around St. Helena Island, the hotbed of the drug trade during Operation Jackpot. Several of these properties do not have addresses because there are no streets accessing them. A lot of these properties, they're in desolate areas. You can only get to them by boat. And these are the perfect areas, the areas that had been used prior to smuggle drugs. You've got the Boulwares getting busted and being known around town for smuggling drugs. Then you've got properties owned by Alec and Boulware that are the perfect access points for these boats to land at. Then you have the fact that Alex Murdaugh has an opioid addiction. So what does all this have to do with Alex Murdaugh and this case? I'm going to tell you. In 2018, Boulware and Alex Murdaugh were very closely connected. They were business partners, they were friends, and Alex Murdaugh was Boulware's attorney. In 2018, 2 months before Barrett Boulware was about to die, he signed basically his entire life away to Alex Murdaugh. On July 6, 2018, Boulware granted power of attorney to Alex Murdaugh, authorizing his attorney and business partner to lease, let, take possession, bargain, sell, assign, convey, pledge, mortgage and encumber, repair, insure, and generally manage any and all property, both real and personal, which I own or may hereafter acquire from any source. It says here that he also authorized Murdaugh to, quote, sign, execute, and deliver any and all legal documents in his name and to deposit any monies received from any source, whatever, for me and in my name with any bank, and to draw and deliver checks in my name against said monies and other monies to be deposited in my name or to my credit. In addition, he finally authorized him to do all things necessary concerning any insurance policies, including the right to change beneficiary, and even granted Alex Murdaugh control over, quote, decisions regarding my health and health care. And this was, by the way, quote, binding on myself and my heirs. Wow, that's a lot. In addition to this connection between Murdaugh and Boulware, there was also their wives and their connections with each other because they were really good friends too. They socialized together, they partied together. There's this photograph that is allegedly, my conspiracy, don't sue me, although I'm pretty sure, but still don't sue me. It's supposed to be Maggie Murdaugh with Barrett Boulware. As we know, the wife, Janine, she's the one that sold the property to Alec. And speaking of Janine, okay, this is what people in town said. They said that Janine Boulware paid cold, hard cash for everything she purchased, including clothes from the nicest women's dress shops in the Low Country. It says here, Boulware and his wife Janine were for several years regular guests of Alex and Maggie's at basketball games. And Allendale's elite were surprised Maggie and Alex spent so much time with them. People were starting to make connections. The first question is, where are the drugs coming from? Where are the drugs coming from? A lot of people say the cartels. So people were now saying, is Alex Murdaugh somehow connected to the drug trade and transactions with the cartel by way of Barrett Boulware, who is known to have connections, who was indicted for these connections? And if so, how far, how wide, who's involved? Whoa. Could this have to do with some sort of debt that he had? The conspiracy theories are swirling. Those are the facts and the theories surrounding the whole Moselle property being sold for $5, and the Moselle thing is going to keep coming up. The next thing that comes up with this Moselle property has to do with Stephen Smith's death. There's this whole controversy. I go into it in detail, much more detail in my first video, but just to give you guys the quick overview is that at first it looked like homicide, but then the coroner switched it and was like rude to the investigators, and there's like a whole issue with that, and she switched it from homicide to hit and run. And once that happened, the case went cold. It only got reopened again when Paul and Maggie were shot, and then they reopened it, and that's like ongoing. We'll talk about that later. But for now, what you need to know is in 2015, during this investigation, the Murdaugh name, what's wrong with me? The Murdaugh name comes up at least 40 times. So the lead investigator on the case was Proctor. And there are some notes of what Proctor said and did during this investigation. This is 2015. So Proctor says, Buster was on our radar long before you were. The Murdaughs know that. They know he's on our radar. What you're telling me is valuable information. Proctor also says, typically you don't see the highway patrol working a murder, and that's what this is. We're not classifying this as anything other than a murder. Then he also adds, there's a reason why Hampton County Sheriff's Office is not handling this. And I'll leave it at that.
Because there's just no physical evidence. I mean, the body, we've got evidence on the body, but no physical evidence. And the, like I said, I will say a hit and run. I don't even want to call it that. It's more a death investigation, basically.
Now, one of the things that gets revealed during the investigation into Stephen Smith's death is what happened inside that home on Moselle. These are some quotes. Kevin tells Proctor about how the Murdaughs have, quote, big parties at their houses, quote, every weekend or every other weekend, including kids from Varnville and Bamberg, anywhere you could think of. That is where the party spot was in Hampton, Kevin says of Moselle. Kevin says he's gone to one party there. He says it's known for a lot of fights, alcohol, drugs kind of thrown in there at the same time. Kevin is the person who, that's a fake name. This is the person who told Proctor that he heard that Buster was somehow involved in Stephen Smith's death. A few years go by, everything seems fine until Gloria Satterfield, Alex Murdaugh's housekeeper, dies in Alex Murdaugh's home. There was some confusion. In the beginning, it said that she fell in their home, their former home in Hampton, South Carolina, but then it turns out actually the incident took place at the Moselle property, that same property in Colton County. When she died, there would seem to be a lot of confusion about what happened. There's like two stories. I don't know if they're separate or can be combined, but one story is that she tripped and fell down the stairs. The story that Gloria's sons were told is that she tripped over the dog and fell, had a TBI, traumatic brain injury, was hospitalized, and then a few days after being hospitalized, she passed. Only Alec and Gloria were in the house at the time. Nobody else. So really, we don't know other than what Alec tells us. And Alec doesn't usually tell the truth. And there was another major inconsistency because the lawsuit that was about to follow said it was a trip and fall. But the autopsy said that the cause of death was natural. And in fact, there wasn't even an autopsy. Hampton County Coroner Angela Topper, she asked SLED, that's the law enforcement division in Southern Carolina, she asked them to investigate Gloria's death because of the inconsistency in the autopsy, which there wasn't even an autopsy, but it was ruled natural. That is inconsistent with the lawsuit that was to follow, which we'll talk about that in a second, that said that this was a trip and fall. Was it natural or was it a trip and fall? It can't really be both. So SLED officials did open up an investigation. They came out and said, based upon a request from the Hampton County Coroner earlier today, as well as information gathered during the course of our other ongoing investigation involving Alex Murdaugh, they are opening the investigation into Gloria Satterfield's death and into the lawsuit and her estate and what happened there. Now, in my previous video, I talked about that a little bit. At the time, we didn't know what we know now. The sons hadn't sued yet. We just knew that there was a fee that was paid to their attorney, Corey Fleming, and we had known the connections between Alec and Corey, and we were like, it's kind of weird. They're friends. They go way back. Alex Murdaugh's son, Paul, his godfather is Corey Fleming. Alex Murdaugh's college roommate, Corey Fleming. Alex Murdaugh's attorney that he worked with for a while, Corey Fleming. And the whole thing was suspicious just with that information. But then Gloria's sons filed a lawsuit against Alex Murdaugh and Corey Fleming and Chad Westendorf. This was shocking. Alex Murdaugh, he didn't pay for Gloria's funeral. However, he did offer her sons money in a very scammer kind of way. He was like, listen, it's my fault that your mom died, so I'm going to sue myself. I'm going to sue myself, and then the money that we get from that, you guys could have some money from my insurance company, and you'll be taken care of, and like, this is how I'm going to take care of you. And you know what? Listen, don't even worry about it. Don't even stress. I know the perfect lawyer. His name's Corey Fleming. He's great. Work with him. He will take care of you. I've got it handled. Don't worry. Love you. The first thing Corey does is he tells the two sons, you should step down from being personal representatives of this estate, which that holds a lot of power. You should step down. Let me get that position, and I can handle all this. I can do all this stuff for you. He convinces them to do so, even though it's not in their interest. They agree. They trusted him. They trusted Alex Murdaugh. They were very trusting. They said, okay, they stepped down. Once he got in this position, he was able to do things without telling them. They didn't have to be present for things. And this is how they were able to do all this without the sons finding out. They then bring Chad Westendorf. He recommends Chad Westendorf. He's associated with the bank. So unbeknownst to the sons, Fleming secures additional money to the tune of $3.8 million on top of the $500,000 he got. So it's like over $4 million, like $4.3 million. Now this settlement hearing for this amount, it was presided over by a judge. The judge, her name is Judge Carmen Mullen. Remember Judge Mullen, she's going to factor in later. But she approves this to the two sons, but they don't even know that he got this money. So they get it, and what do they do with it? They end up doing such a roundabout scam. So there is a company called Forge Consulting LLC. They have nothing to do with this. Their name was used in Alex's scheme. But this is like a financial consulting company. He made it look like the money was going to be put into this financial consulting firm that's going to handle and advise them how to use this large sum of money so that, you know, it gets invested and they make the most of it. But what Alec ended up doing was creating another bank account just under the name Forge. So it kind of looked like Forge Consulting, but it wasn't. Had nothing to do with this legitimate business. It was a P.O. box and some random thing. And he had them write the checks out to Forge as if it was Forge Consulting. But really it's going to this bank account he made, also called Forge. He then cashes that money in and takes it for himself and probably spends it on whatever he wants. In this lawsuit, they have checks, they have the paper trail documents, like the evidence is just ironclad that this was embezzlement, that they were fraudulent, just predatory, the whole nine. Corey Fleming's license to practice law has been suspended, revoked, what's the word? They took it away from him. He can't practice law anymore in the area. And the same thing happened to Alex Murdaugh. So good. And then we saw that this actually spread a little bit farther because accusations started to come in that the whole ass law firm, you know, that law firm, pumped, pimped, whatever you want to call it, PMPED, the family law firm, they came out and they were like, this is shocking and oh my God, and how horrible and all that. But this paper trail actually had evidence that showed that the law firm may have known more than they're pretending to know. Quote, this is what the law firm's statement was. It's important for everyone to know that PMPED did not represent Alex in that case. His insurance company hired counsel to represent him. Your documents filed Thursday show emails and letters from Alex Murdaugh that his paralegals acting as representatives of the estate of Gloria Satterfield in the wrongful death settlement. That would be Alex Murdaugh, the defendant in the settlement, claiming to represent Satterfield's sons, who are the plaintiffs. This is a conflict of interest of epic proportions. It's so bold. Then it says that the law firm sent letters of representation to third parties and other notarizations and emails with Corey Fleming and emails with Alex Murdaugh. Did the law firm know about this scam with Gloria? Did they know? Did they turn a blind eye? Did they participate? I don't know. You tell me. So that's the whole Gloria Satterfield rabbit hole. Now let's talk about the next thing that happened, which was the boat crash.
What bridge is this?
And the next weekend, emergency responders received this call.
911, where's your emergency?
This is Kenny Campbell. We're on the search team rescue. We think we found her.
I go into it again. I'm repeating myself, but I go into the details of the boat crash in my previous video. That's not what I want to do here. What I want to do here is I want to talk about the cover-up.
I spoke with the lawyer representing Connor Cook, another teen who was on that boat when it crashed. He tells me that Alex Murdaugh was working behind the scenes to blame Cook for the crash. He also says Murdaugh encouraged the Cook family to hire an attorney who he knew personally. A man's name we've heard to lawyer, Corey Fleming. And it's interesting he keeps popping up. I mean, his name's brought up in this lawsuit, and then you have the Gloria Satterfield case. It's a bizarre thing that this just keeps happening.
I want to talk about what Alex Murdaugh and his father, Randolph Murdaugh, what they did the night of the crash at the hospital. To set the scene, remember how after the boat crash, they were transferred to the hospital. So we're going to focus on Paul, the grandson who crashed the boat, and Morgan, who is Paul's girlfriend, who he was allegedly hitting and yelling at right before the boat crashed. Then you have Connor Cook. He's the one they're going to try to pin it on. Connor Cook. They're all in the hospital. As we know, Paul was desperately trying to get a phone, and he was desperately trying to call his grandfather and his dad to get them to come. So they do. They show up to the hospital. Just a few minutes later, his dad and his grandfather show up, and these are case notes from the officers who interviewed the hospital staff. The first person is Paul Murdaugh's nurse. She said that when he was asked how much he drank, first he said 5 to 6 beers. Then later on, he said he was drinking and doing drugs all night. The next person interviewed was the charge nurse. She said that Paul's father, so that's Alex Murdaugh, he came and was going in everyone's room. He went in and out of Connor's room. He asked where Morgan, Paul's girlfriend, was. And so she ended up telling a security guard to keep an eye on Alex Murdaugh. And she said that she told him multiple times to stay in his own room, and that she smelled alcohol on Alex Murdaugh's breath. So the dad and the son are drunk. So this is what the security supervisor had to say. He said he heard Paul's grandfather tell Paul to shut the F up. He said that the grandfather was pissed, quote, agitated. Then there was another security guard who overheard Alex Murdaugh on a phone call saying, quote, she's gone, don't worry about her, and also love you, bye. So people are like, damn, is he talking about Mallory? Like, she's gone, don't worry about her? Probably. The ER tech was also interviewed. She said that Paul Murdaugh asked her if she would hold his penis, and he told her butt was nice. She said that she saw Alex Murdaugh go into Connor Cook's room several times, and he also told Connor's father that he was, quote, handling it. She said that Paul never showed any remorse for what happened, and she said that emergency room atmosphere was, quote, a weird, corny teen drama movie. So now this is Connor's nurse. Remember, Connor Cook is the one they're trying to pin and say that he was driving instead of Paul. So she said that she heard Alex Murdaugh tell Connor that they're going to figure everything out. She also heard Alex Murdaugh tell the officer that Paul Murdaugh would not be making any statements because he's intoxicated and he didn't want him to make a drunken statement. She said that Alex Murdaugh was acting this way, but as soon as the parents came in, he started acting different. She said Paul's father changed his behavior when the other parents showed up. The last interview was done with Morgan's nurse. Now remember, Morgan is Paul Murdaugh's girlfriend, now ex-girlfriend. He said, quote, Alex Murdaugh kept trying to get in her room. He noticed her anxiety when Alex Murdaugh tried to enter. She told him she was going to break up with Paul and that she was really upset with Paul because of his drinking, and that, quote, he had already almost killed them in a vehicle accident before while he was intoxicated. Now we have this big incident that's happening and they're in complete damage control mode. And as part of that, Alex Murdaugh decides he needs to hide the fact that he was involved in that wrongful death lawsuit with Gloria, right? So what does he do? Remember Judge Cullen?
It's actually Judge Mullen, not Cullen. I'm going to say Cullen again. It's Mullen. Sorry.
Remember how I told you guys to remember that Judge Cullen, that approved the settlement? Okay, she comes into play now because something weird happened. The way the order happened was really, really weird. This is according to Gloria Satterfield's son's attorneys. He says this order is concerning for a number of reasons. Alex's name is not listed as a defendant at the top as it should be. He did not ask the court for permission to remove his name. There is no docket number listed on the document. The document was not entered into the court record. These documents always have dates and court information on the side. But for whatever reason, Mullen signed that order on May 13th, 2019. Days after Paul Murdaugh's bond hearing for his 3 felony charges in the boat crash. Why would she do that? Word on the street is there's connections, and they have connections too, between the Murdaugh and Judge Mullen. Allegedly, my conspiracy, don't sue me. It was all done in such a hush-hush, off the record, not following protocol kind of way. And it's like, why? Why? So Gloria Satterfield's son's lawyers went to depose the judge, which is like unheard of, where a judge gets deposed and has to sit and answer questions from a lawyer. Very unheard of. So he did that. He was like, you know what happened. You were there. We need to know why this happened. This is very strange. And she didn't respond. And then mysteriously, the lawyer withdrew his request to depose her. She withdrew herself from anything regarding the Murdaughs for conflict of interest. The lawyer said he has ironclad evidence. He doesn't need to question her anymore. So it's still very fuzzy. Like, what was that judge's connection? Why did she do that? Like, again, how far and wide does this go? Despite Alex Murdaugh's best efforts, as well as the grandfather Randolph's best efforts to protect Paul from his own actions, Paul was still indicted. He was indicted April 18th, 2019 on charges of boating under the influence causing death and 2 counts of boating under the influence causing great bodily injury. Now get this, the same month Paul was indicted, in April, Maggie Murdaugh meets with a divorce attorney. And it said that she met with him in late April. This is what people are saying, but according to Alex Murdaugh's attorney, they were in marital bliss.
Are there any problems in Maggie and Alex's marriage?
Absolutely none. None. And I trust me, I was with them for almost 2 years. I represented Paul.
So soon after, days after her son gets indicted, she's now meeting with a divorce lawyer. And it turns out there are a lot of issues in Alex and Maggie Murdaugh's marriage. Apparently, she's investigating his finances. Why? Because checks were bouncing. She was writing checks to charities. They were bouncing. She was like, oh, there must be some sort of mistake. Then she would find out, no, there's no money in that account. She would go to Alex like, what? This is, oh my God, the humiliation. Like, the check to the charity and it bounced. And he's like, don't worry. Always, he was like, don't worry, I got this. This is my stuff. I'm taking care of this. You don't worry. We'll figure it out. And it seemed like he would figure it out until as time went on, he was not figuring it out. And that's when Maggie was unhappy. There was no money. Apparently there was no love left in the relationship. They weren't affectionate. They weren't really like meeting up and having these moments together. It seemed cold and distant. According to sources, I don't know how reliable, but sources have said that Maggie knew about the pills and she would find the pills and she would say she was going to confront, the people who were supplying the pills or whose name was on the bottle if it wasn't Alex's name. But nobody really knows if she did that. It seems like she turned a blind eye to certain things as long as the cash was flowing. And once the cash stopped flowing, she's like, oh, what am I dealing with this for? My conspiracy, allegedly, don't sue me. I don't know if that's what she said. I'm theorizing. And then less than 2 months after Maggie met with that divorce lawyer, her and her son Paul would wind up dead. And who found them? Alex Murdaugh. Where were they? On the Moselle property.
Hampton County 911, where's your emergency?
This is Alex Murdaugh at 4147 Moselle Road. I need the police to answer immediately. My wife and child just shot badly.
So when Alex called 911, it was 10 p.m. at night. This same source that talked about the marital problems and all that, they also said that Maggie loved the dog kennels and going to the dog kennels, and that Alex Murdaugh actually didn't care for those dogs in a pet loving kind of way. They were more like hunting hounds, working dogs, and that he was never by the kennels. And that in fact, Maggie was going to the kennels routinely, and she was trying to get Paul to come with her because she saw that he was starting to have sort of like addictive tendencies and drug abuse, and she was worried he was taking after his father, Alec, and so she tried to get him to do something productive and to be involved, distract him. Now that summer was coming, he was going to want to party more. So she's giving him like projects to keep him occupied and distracted from partying. And so she would have him come and clean the dog kennels and do stuff with the dogs often. It seems like she had him doing these things with her when something happened. And that something is they were both shot dead. Although police haven't told us a lot, they have told us something. So this is what we know. Maggie was shot multiple times, including in the back with a semi-automatic rifle. A different gun was used on Paul, a shotgun. And Paul was shot twice, in the face and in the torso with the shotgun. One of these guns was the guns that the Murdaughs owned on their, remember, this is a hunting property, so they've got guns, right? One of them was like their own guns. The other one, we're not sure, but they didn't specify, like, was it the automatic rifle or the shotgun that was a Murdaugh family gun. They found shell casings at the scene. They also asked for video surveillance system. The police took evidence from a swampy area near the house, like 2 miles from the house. They also took a 2021 Chevy Suburban that was registered to the Murdaugh law firm. They took that. They seized the guns as well. And they also found Maggie Murdaugh's cell phone on a rural road just outside of the hunting lodge. According to sources in the investigation, the way they found the phone is that a family member helped lead them to that phone that was like thrown near the house, but they wouldn't say which family member. And when they took the phone, they put it with like DNA collection evidence, which is leading people to think that there might have been some DNA on the phone. That's what they're testing. So we don't know, maybe her DNA, someone else's DNA, we'll see. So the big question is, did Alex Murdaugh shoot Maggie and Paul? Did he do this? Did he have someone else do it? Like, is he somehow involved? That's what everyone wants to know. Now, he was named a person of interest. As you know, person of interest is not the same as suspect. People think that Alex Murdaugh has a motive. People say that he was extremely upset with Paul, not necessarily for killing someone, but for ruining the family name. Also, he was getting sued. Alex Murdaugh was getting sued for wrongful death because it was his boat. And then Buster, the brother, was also named in a lawsuit. Mallory's mom sued them because it was his ID that was used. And the lawsuit said that Alex Murdaugh knew his son Paul would be drinking and driving the boat, and that Buster knew his brother was taking his fake ID and buying alcohol, and therefore they're responsible. So now he feels like not only is he getting himself in trouble, he's getting the family in trouble. And then regarding Maggie, he's upset with her. She's trying to investigate his money. She's filing for divorce. She might take whatever little money he has left. And the theory is he killed them for their life insurance policy, because this is another rumor. I couldn't confirm it. Again, sources. And this was denied by Alex's attorney, although he also was caught in a few lies. So it's hard to know who to believe. But they're saying that there were life insurance policies on Maggie, on Paul, and that given the financial struggles that we're about to find out Alex Murdaugh has, he kind of did it because he was mad at them and he wanted the money. Is that what happened? I don't know. You decide. The interesting thing too is that Paul's body was cremated.
Correction, it was actually Paul and Maggie's bodies that were both cremated according to the funeral home.
So the next thing that happened is, the whole shooting when Alex claimed that he was shot in the head while he had a flat tire. He was fixing it. I talked about it in my other video. At that time, he hadn't admitted to faking it. But at that time, we already knew that there were major holes in the story. He was airlifted for a superficial wound, which was weird. And then there was holes in the story with the tire. It was a run flat tire. He didn't have a spare tire. How was he changing the tire? It was just like the whole thing was weird.
Murdaugh suffered a superficial head wound and was able to call for help. I'm resigning from my law firm and entering rehab after a long battle that has been exacerbated by these murders.
The big question, Are these two cases connected?
And then that was when we had the whole head injury debacle where it was like no visible injury, and then they changed it and they were like computer error, major head injury. And then we saw the mugshot once Alec turned himself in. It's all very normal.
Normal conditions. So no, we did exactly what's normal. This is being handled in a very normal fashion.
After this whole head injury debacle, SLED came out and they announced, we're going to investigate this shooting because the story's not adding up. We don't know what's going on with Alec. As soon as they announced that, apparently Alec confesses. He's like, oh, just kidding. It's actually an insurance scam. I was going to kill myself because I needed to give my only surviving son $10 million insurance policy, or else, you know, he's not going to be able to survive without that $10 million. So I was going to kill myself for my son. But before he staged his own shooting, he signed away his rights to manage Paul's estate to his brother, not Buster, Paul's brother, but to Alex's brother, Randolph Murdaugh IV. We ended up hearing about this scheme, and then the next day there was an arrest. They arrested Curtis Smith.
Cameras captured the moment Hampton County deputies walked Curtis Smith into jail.
According to SLED, Alex Murdaugh actually asked 61-year-old Curtis Edward Smith to kill him.
He asked Curtis Smith to shoot and kill him September 4th. The plan, according to SLED, to help Murdaugh's surviving son Buster collect a $10 million life insurance policy. But it didn't work. Instead, Murdaugh told SLED what happened.
Who is Curtis Smith, and did he have any ties to the Murdaugh family before all of this?
Smith may be related to the Murdaugh family. His obituary for his brother revealing his mother's name was Emmeline Murdaugh Smith.
We found out Murdaugh represented Smith in a personal injury lawsuit back in 2010.
Had to have 3 discs removed out the back and got rods and screws in every place of them. It's not fun.
Smith is facing a variety of charges, including conspiracy to commit insurance fraud and assisted suicide. Smith is expected to be assigned a public defender in the next few days.
Now, who is Curtis Smith? Well, according to Alex's lawyer, he's Alex's drug dealer. According to everyone else, he's the fall guy. As with every conspiracy, there needs to be a fall guy. And a lot of people think that Curtis Edward, aka Fast Eddie Smith, is the fall guy. And he seemed kind of like crazy in the beginning when they first arrested him, but then later on, he kind of had cleaned up and stuff and did an interview, and he claimed he was set up.
You feel betrayed?
I consider him one of my best friends. He's like a brother to me.
They painted Curtis as Alex's drug dealer who basically didn't give a crap and was willing to like shoot him because whatever, he's a druggie, who cares, blah, blah, whatever. That was the story. But Curtis denied this. He did an interview with the New York Post.
I've never heard anybody that I can remember, so I mean, it's just that simple.
He said, I know what they're trying to say about me, and it ain't true. It was the craziest situation I have ever been involved with. I was set up to be the fall guy, and those damn pictures of me in the newspaper, I was looking at them this morning. They didn't let me take a damn shower. I get a call from Alec that Saturday afternoon to come to where he was, and I thought it was maybe to fix something, he said, pointing to his pickup truck that was his work truck. I had no idea what he wanted. I just went over there. He said once he got there, he found Alex Murdaugh in his car. He said Alec then got out of his car, brandishing a gun and waving it around as if he was about to shoot himself. Quote, I run over and we wrestled a minute together, me trying to get the gun away from him. Then the gun kind of went off above his head and I got scared to death and I ran to my truck and took off. He said he took Murdaugh's gun and threw it away. He didn't say where. Quote, I wound up with the gun. It was just plain stupid, just plain stupid. When asked if any bullet actually struck or grazed Alex's head, he shook his head. The gun kind of went off above his head and I got scared to death and I ran to my truck and took off, he said. I don't know. I just got out of there. When he was asked if he was Alex's drug dealer, he shook his head no. Here's where things get bizarre. The 911 call was made, which we haven't heard. I hope they release it. I would love to hear Alex Murdaugh call 911 and say he was shot. But The weird thing was that the helicopter was called, that airlifted him, it was called 12 minutes before the actual police were called. It arrived 9 minutes after the call, and he was swept away. And then the police came way later. When they were asked why that happened, the Hampton County Sheriff said that they were, quote, tied up. And so another police department showed up, not the Hampton County Police Department. People are theorizing, okay, that they were intentionally delayed so that Alec could get away and there could be less, you know, like people figuring out what was really going on. And so this whole scheme was to help Buster, which, by the way, where the fuck is Buster? Well, turns out he's in one of the family's properties. He was found here. They took pictures of him. He was like moving out or moving some stuff. There was a car. He was putting his stuff in the car. He did say that he spoke to his father, but he said, quote, to the media that was there, "I have no interest in commenting on any of y'all's questions." He didn't say anything after that. And so that's where Buster is. After the whole Curtis arrest, we had Alec turning himself in. And man, was that a fall from grace. In the very courtroom and courthouse that he reigned supreme, generations of his family did the same. He walked in and he was shackled and cuffed and wearing the jailhouse scrubs and looking all feeble and shit. My, how the mighty have fallen. But even though he fell, there was a cushion, there was a safety net. He didn't fall that hard. Why? Because he was granted a personal recognizance bail, which is different than a surety bail bond.
Your Honor, he has had a tremendous opioid addiction. The death of his wife and son have put him over the edge in terms of that addiction. And that is why, one of the major reasons he was considering having himself killed. He and we decided he should call SWED. We asked him to record the conversation in which he detailed every element of what he is charged with today. Total cooperation. Gave him the name, told him about the gun, told him about the knife. He has fallen from grace. And that has had an extraordinary effect on him. So we'd ask you to allow him to go and help heal himself. A surety bond is not needed in this case. And if anyone wants to see the face of what opioid addiction does, you're looking at it.
I've seen these type of cases before, and sometimes those who had everything and who are suffering a possible fall from grace are actually more of a concern than a hardened criminal who's been in this situation before.
I don't feel that Mr. Murdaugh is going to be risk to the community. $5,000 personal recognizance bond. His total bond is going to be $20,000 personal recognizance.
The prosecutors, they wanted him to have a monitor, they wanted a higher bond, they wanted the surety bond. The judge denied all of that, and this is the judge in the county that, you know, he's been in, and they call it his home court advantage, literally court, you know. Anyway, sports reference. That's where the case stands as it is. We know that there are more investigations coming. There's more stuff going on. I would love to know what you guys think. Do you think Alex Murdaugh is responsible for Maggie and Paul's deaths? How far and wide do you think this stuff goes? Like the whole cartel and the judges that are dirty, and like, is that conspiracy or is that just the truth? I'd love to know what you guys think. Please tell me. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.